Good evening and welcome to Too Deep, an NFL podcast with us, kind of as always, from places we're not used to, with some faces we don't normally see. It is the Too Deep podcast, talking some NFL football. With us, as always, is Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, NFL.com. Jeff, on assignment, you're on the road, or is that like your grandmother's bedroom or something?
I'm on the road. It's actually a suite. It's a very
Ooh.
long rectangular room with a bed like in the corner. So it's very hard to figure out how to do it. Only place I could find an outlet to plug into. So I'm right
Okay.
in front of the bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. It looks like I remember my grandmother's room looking like. So is it an old, distinguished hotel?
It's a crap hole hotel.
Okay.
How about
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
The Westin Dallas downtown. First time, first and last time. They'll see my business.
How do you afford your rock and roll lifestyle, huh?
Yeah.
Looks like somebody may have made a mistake on the bookings for one Jeff Chadiha. That is not Eric Eager. I can assure you of that. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, excellent columnist for the Kansas City Star, joins us in his stead as Eager's off talking to some crew of college punks somewhere about numbers and math and whatnot. Instead, we go to the man, the spine of the Kansas City Star, Sam McDowell. Sam, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Very similarly shaped as Eager. Jeff, I'm curious who's rooming with you in the suite.
Just me. I'm a soloist. I don't room with anybody. I don't travel with anybody. I find people along the way, but nobody stays in the same room with me.
Am I the only one that Sam, after we tested the mic, got like super quiet, Jeff? Am I the only one that sound that?
Yeah. No, I think he's just biding his time. I will say, don't mention the word luck tonight. it will get you in trouble.
You know what? That's funny because it got brought up at work. Somebody said, yeah, I heard the podcast. So what was going on? And then they wanted to lecture me on luck. And I said, don't go down this road. This is not a road that you go down. And they insisted upon going down the road. And I said, again, you don't want to go down there. And you know what, Jeff? This will stun you. It ended up about the same way as last night. So
agreeing to disagree.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree on the levels of luck. Maybe I'm sure Sam will bring it up to me, next time he's on the radio show or something. But yes, we will agree to disagree. All right, listen, we've got a lot to get to tonight. We want to hit a lot of topics, and starting with first and foremost, what's going on with the Indianapolis Colts. There's no doubt that if you've seen that, bizarre, odd. Could it work? I don't know. We'll talk about it. Jeff Saturday, now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Josh Allen didn't practice on Wednesday. Should he be playing at all, or should the Bills be sitting him no matter what because of how valuable a commodity he is? Tom Brady engineers a last-second comeback. Is he back as the Brady we know? Jalen Ramsey calling out the Rams offense. Are the Rams imploding? Can Sean McVay stop this one? Aaron Rodgers threw 3 interceptions against the worst defense in the NFL and lost to the Detroit Lions while scoring only 9 points, even though Jeff is thrilled. It's pretty clear that that's not good. Is Aaron Rodgers part of the problem? Odell Beckham Jr., rumored to be going to the Cowboys. Perfect place for him. Justin Fields moving to the top of the 21 quarterback class. MVP frontrunner, coach of the year frontrunner. What are we looking at in this week's games? We'll talk about it all. But, Jeff, let's start with it. What the hell was your reaction when you saw that Jeff Saturday was now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts?
Well, like everybody else, I thought it was a joke. A message on your phone, Jeff Saturday becomes the head coach. 90 minutes after they fired Frank Reich, it didn't seem plausible, but it is. We're living in a bizarro universe now in the NFL, at least in Indiana. I can understand some of the frustration, and I've mentioned this before, that Jim Irsay feels, the Colts owner, with you're in a division with the Tennessee Titans who find a way to win games with, I think, less talent, to be honest with you. I think your star quarterback walked away 5 years ago. You've been running through all these veteran quarterbacks. You're on Hard Knocks last year, and you lose the season finale to Jacksonville, get bounced out of the playoffs, and that's a disaster. And so I think his head's been exploding for the last 18 months, and got rid of the quarterback, or benched the quarterback, fired the offensive coordinator. Next on the firing line was Frank Reich. Now, I don't see how Jeff Saturday is going to make anything better. And I've known him for a long time. I love him. He's great as a player, great talker. You've seen him on ESPN. The guy is on ESPN. Same guy is in person. I just don't see how a guy who's never coached at the college or NFL level, who was only consulting, which basically means sitting in the booth with Irsay on game days, is going to walk into a room with 53 players and a coaching staff and take over at midseason and have any kind of impact. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
All right, Sam. Can you think of any scenario where something like this has worked? Is there any precedent to point to say, all right, look, I know we all think this is crazy, but there actually is a bizarro world, to quote Jeff, that has actually this has been successful.
Not in this sport. I can't even really think of another example where it's been attempted. In other sports, yes. I mean, Steve Kerr was pulled from TNT right before he got Warriors job. So I've seen it in other sports. I just think there's way more nuance to the NFL that it's just a massive hurdle. And, what's interesting, as Jeff talked about it and mentions the characters involved, is that the GM is not mentioned at all. Chris Ballard is not a significant part of this story. And that's what became clear during the press conference, which, I mean, as bizarre as the story was, the press conference took the cake on the bizarreness of this. And it became clear that a guy who is the son of a heating and cooling fortune is making NFL decisions instead of a guy who has spent his life in football. That was the biggest takeaway for me, because I mean, I don't think it became clear during that presser that the coach is not the problem in Indianapolis.
Yeah. Well, what I think is amazing is, listen, Jeff, I don't even think you can feel like Jim Irsay had this thought until like 5 minutes before he did it, because if there's clearly an affection there for Jeff Saturday, right? But if you wanted him to succeed, would you have, one, benched a quarterback, two, fired an offensive coordinator, then fired the head coach and make him take over to where he's got to go find a play caller, and you've taken away the best chances? I mean, wouldn't you have wanted him to come in and put eyes on these people and then make the decision whether or not to fire him? I mean, this is absolutely battery and backwards. It's like he was pissed. He did the quarterback thing. That didn't work. The offensive coordinator thing, that didn't work. Now I'm going head coach, and now, wait a minute, I want my guy in there. Like, there is no way you can say you went from A to E. This was like M to J to D to C. Like how this is not the workings of a rational individual.
Yeah, and the irony here is that Saturday was a consultant. So usually when you're a consultant, people ask you for your opinion. Do you think this is a good idea? So what you just laid out, you would think Saturday, I don't think this is a great way to go, boss. Let's not do this. But, look, it's, again, I think we've all been around football for a long period of time. Not even the NFL, just any football team. It all starts back in the spring through training camp. There's a process that you go through to build a football team. That it's like, so when Jim Irsay talks about, I know how to build a football team, and talks about sausage and all this, making sausage or whatever, it's completely counterintuitive to what it takes to build a football team. It's a great reference to talk about Steve Kerr in the NBA, but NBA's 12 guys. You walk in there, let's run some plays, we'll get it going. You hand the ball to whoever, Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, make some shots. Like, it's such a big machine you're trying to run. And I like Jeff Saturday as a person. I think he's a great dude. But again, it's just it really, and Sam's right. I can't think of anything I've ever seen in the NFL that rivals this. And I've seen some crazy stuff. And I covered Al Davis for years. I was at a training camp where 3 coaches walked off and a player disappeared my first year on the beat. This is like head and shoulders above all that. But you know what is crazy about it? It does. I was doing a radio show in Pittsburgh, and someone made a good point. This is not a football move. It's a show business move. It's a way of saying, I'm going to bring attention to my team. I'm going to do something that is just so out of the ordinary. I'll tell you what, everybody's going to be watching the Colts this week. everybody wants to see what this looks like on the field.
And how about Jeff Saturday tweets out, in his role as an analyst, the Raiders are not a good team, and then that's the team that he's going to turn around and face. And and by the way, the coach is Josh McDaniels, who was hired before Frank Reich and then quit 3 days into it. I mean, you can't make it up. And I'm with you. Listen, a couple of the things, and we were posting a lot of the comments. If you're catching us via the podcast later, we record the podcast with a live stream, and you can be part of the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you catch it 9 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays. A lot of folks have been saying, like, hey, NFL owners like Dan Snyder, Mark Davis, like, what's going on with NFL ownership? And I think that is, the social media world, you got to teach your kids, hey, don't be putting videos out there. Don't be saying ridiculous things. Assume everybody's watching. It's a camera world, right? Assume there's a camera on you at all times when you're walking around, because frankly, there probably is a security camera somewhere. You have to live that way. And apparently it's tape delayed to the NFL owners. They haven't gotten that message yet. They're out on the West Coast waiting for the late broadcast that you can't be a goof all the time. And Irsay, it's almost like he is craving the spotlight. He first of all, he was the guy to jump in front of the reporters at the NFL owners meetings and talk about, we got 24 votes to get rid of Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones fires out, but to Bob Kraft, don't F with me, Bob, and that gets out there, which I've been told is a lot more normal than people may realize for those NFL owners meetings. I don't know. Maybe it's always been this kind of free for all, Sam. And now it's just finally being exposed. It's seeing the light of day, but usually like the coaching moves, the football moves are kind of sacred. And Jerry Jones has clearly empowered guys like Jim Irsay. He kept talking about building a football team. Like, I think he's pissed that Jerry's the GM and he doesn't get credit for this.
There is so much ego involved. There's way more ego involved in this sport than people realize, I think. And it all does come from those 32 guys that, are billionaires, and the rest of these guys are millionaires. I will say, we talk about when a midseason trade happens, can this player get caught up to speed with this new team? And by the way, that player has been playing NFL games for 7 weeks. We're talking about a coach now just coming into a team, and he's not trying to fit in. He's supposed to be running the thing. Yeah. I like I said, I've never seen anything like it, but I can't figure out a way that it ends well this year. And to be honest, I've wondered whether or not it's even a smart move for Jeff Saturday if this is truly what he wants to do. Because can you imagine a worse situation to walk into if this is what you want to do? And this is going to be on your resume now. Like, these last 8 games are part of your history now.
That was part of the press conference, Jeff. He said, well, it's interim. I'm auditioning for this and the other 31 teams. I mean, he made it sound like, hey, everybody, come dig me because I'm available for this gig. Like, come on.
Yeah, as he's putting on a Krusty the Clown suit, getting ready to. It's like you are going to embarrass yourself. There's no way this works. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's covered that team for a long time. We were joking that Peyton Manning be the GM, and I said, well, maybe Marvin Harrison is director of security too. They just bring everybody back, give everybody a job. And for those who don't get the Marvin Harrison reference, go check Google and see what he does in Philadelphia. It'll blow your mind. But
don't check it on his block.
Yeah,
okay? Leave
that's
him
right
in his lawn chair on his block, and if he's got the car wash bucket next to him, really steer clear.
Yeah,
Google that. You'll get.
Don't mess with that guy. Don't mess with that guy. But ultimately, I do think there's a lot of, I think, frustration, a lot of desire to. This team has never rebounded from Andrew Luck walking out the door, and I was on 810 radio earlier this week talking about this, and Bill Polian a couple of years ago for a story I was doing on how you deal with losing or changing over from franchise quarterbacks. It was in reference to Ben Roethlisberger and how you deal with how sensitive that can be. And he talked about just when Peyton Manning got hurt, had that neck injury, and having to go, it's being shell-shocked that you're so used to having these guys being in the building and building plans around them, building salary cap strategies around them, draft strategies, free agency. And then all of a sudden they're gone. And it's just, it can literally destroy the soul of an organization. And just what they've been doing to a certain extent with the Colts for the last 4 years is trying to hold on to something that wasn't real. And it's really snowballing now on them. And that's the thing now. You're realizing that. And the irony again with Irsay, he was somebody who didn't know how to run a franchise because he knew how to hire good people. Bill Polian was a Hall of Fame executive. Tony Dungy was a Hall of Fame head coach. He had really good people in place. And unfortunately, they've been spending the last 4 years trying to find the next washed up veteran quarterback to come in there and keep them afloat. And they paid a price for it now.
Yeah. And in reality, what they should be doing is embracing the suck, getting as many draft picks as possible, shipping off players. Listen, Sam, Jeff Saturday is eminently more qualified than you and I are. He's played in the NFL. He's been in NFL practices. He's been in meetings. He's more qualified than Jeff. Jeff's more qualified than us because he at least has played the game at the college level. But game planning, budgeting your time, division of assignments. I mean, it's one thing to be a great chef. It's another thing to go ahead and run a restaurant, accounting, bookkeeping, all those things that don't have anything to do with the linguine is an important part of being a head coach, right?
Yeah, and also to build off of what you said about embracing the suck, like let's say they do that, and then all of a sudden you have a top pick. Now, one of the guys you might want to be developing a quarterback, which is the position the Colts have needed for so long, would be Frank Reich. I mean, that's the position he's played, the position he's developed. And now instead, I don't know if Jeff Saturday will be the guy. We don't know he says he's auditioning. We don't know if he'll be the guy, but now, potential offensive line mind who's never coached the NFL is developing a first-year rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Jeff, last thing on Jeff Saturday, unless anybody else has got a new angle, I will ask you if you can see a path to this working. But the last thing is, here's the part that also strikes me, and we've talked a lot in previous shows. It's been a while since we brought it up, but usually when we get to the coach carousel time of the year,
right,
the Rooney Rule comes up. And very quickly, there's some people saying, wait a minute, Reggie Wayne's on the staff. You're going out and getting a white guy from outside. And to, Jim Irsay was right to say, listen, I'm the guy who hired Tony Dungy. I hired Jim Caldwell, which are valid points. Yes. I don't think Jim Irsay, I don't know him personally, but I don't think he's a racist. And I don't think he made this move wanting a white guy. I think he likes Jeff Saturday. I think Jeff Saturday's his pal. This would be akin to Dan Snyder hiring Sonny Jurgensen to coach the Commanders because he's always up at his booth. He's clearly buddies.
Every owner's got one.
They've all got one of the ex guys that they like rolling with, and that's great. And I think that's what's going on. But it's not when you say, yeah, he's the interim coach, which is how they're avoiding that. He's not being given the head coaching job. He's just interim. But then when you say, well, I'd like it to be permanent. You're like, how do you go in and interview for that job at the end of the year if Jeff Saturday is still a candidate? If he says, I want this job, how do you go in and how do you take that process seriously? And while I think Jim Irsay did not mean harm to it, those processes are put in place and need to be respected by all the teams, even the teams that have hired black coaches in the past.
Yeah, that's the real damage that's done here is really just kind of this neglect, just dismissing that part of it and just responding on impulse, saying, I want my guy in here now to make me feel better about the situation. But yeah, down the road, and Saturday even discussed this in his first press conference, saying, I want to address the Rooney Rule. And, I was told it's 8 weeks or whatever, and I'll have to re-interview for the job. But ultimately, it's not a job that any coach, let alone a minority coach, is going to be excited about interviewing for. And you've already set the stage for whatever you want to deem success. If you're Jim Irsay, you can use that as a tool to go hire Jeff Saturday now. I mean, the same thing kind of happened in New Orleans with Dennis Allen, he was successful on the staff with Sean Payton. But that's what the NFL wants to avoid. And and I do understand that being an interim coach, you're not facing the Rooney Rule rules, but you still have to, as owners, understand how this looks. And it looks bad. Ultimately, it looks really bad.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the job in that press conference became significantly less attractive for whoever it's going to be. I mean, if you're watching that, if you're a head coach, who do you want to be your boss? A GM, or do you want an owner to be your direct boss? And it's clear that an owner is calling more shots than he should be calling. But what does Jeff Saturday say when he interviews for this job? Because the thing you'd want to list is say, well, listen, I was put in a really bad position. You wouldn't believe this guy, what he did to put me in this spot and hire. And Jim Mercer says, oh, yeah, that guy was me.
Yeah. Listen, we're not going to talk politics, but this is a relevant point. If Donald Trump can be elected president of the United States with no experience, Jeff Saturday can handle running a football team, having been a former player. I say this jokingly, but also seriously. The NFL is more competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's much more of a results-oriented business. You don't have like half the country that'll stand behind you just because you wear their sweater. Okay, it's a little bit it's a little bit more competitive in that nature, and frankly, it's held much more accountable than our elected officials, it seems, these days. But
your own guys dislike you, not the other guys. Your own guys dislike you. Yeah.
Exactly. Is there any path to success, Jeff? And then we'll move on. We've got a lot to get to. Do you see any way this works?
No,
I mean,
no. And I feel bad for Saturday because there's a part of me that thinks he could be a really good head coach with experience and time. But to be thrown into this mess, I'd have a hard time looking at any coach in the NFL that has even a modicum of experience being able to step in here and do anything. I mean, forget about guys we all know the Bill Belichick. That's a whole different category, Andy Reid. But just it'd be tough for someone on his staff right now, a Gus Bradley or a John Fox, who's been a head coach, to make this thing better, because there's so many things wrong with this team fundamentally. They're a team that wants to be physical and run first, and the offensive line stinks. The running back's hurt. 6th-round pick playing quarterback. It's just, that those players will tap out in a hurry. They're getting ready for vacation already.
Sam, we saw up there, is Chris Ballard next, the general manager of the Colts? That question was asked, and the personnel, there are some pieces that are good pieces, but they're missing in a lot of the key ones. Obviously, quarterback being the other one, but while they have good offensive linemen, they don't have a very good left tackle, right? That's the most important spot. They have some good defensive pieces, but not a great edge rusher. The talent. I'm with you, Jeff. I don't see how it can work. And if Jeff Saturday, to your point, Sam, that you made earlier, wanted to be a coach, paying your dues. It's not just about putting in time and waiting your turn. It's about gaining the experience that comes with paying your dues. But this roster, like Jeff said, Mike Tomlin's not winning with this roster. Andy Reid would struggle to win with this roster, right? There is no path to success here, is there?
No, I mean, that's it to me. Like I said, I mean, I think that the problems have long stretched beyond the head coach. I mean, you look at just the quarterbacks they've gone through since, and I know we weren't going to mention the word luck, but since they've gone through, I mean, those guys, the veterans that they brought in have not had other jobs since. I mean, Phillip Rivers, a year after he was in Indianapolis, is coaching the high school team, which maybe he's on the track to become Jeff Saturday's successor. He's coaching high school football right now.
Sure.
They haven't figured out the most important positions, and I mean that's what the NFL is.
Next coach of the Chargers, Phillip Rivers. That's we can see the new wave taking over in the NFL. All right, let's move on to Josh Allen. Didn't practice today. They're calling him day to day. They can call him whatever they want. Some of that oftentimes is gamesmanship, forcing your opponent to prepare for multiple quarterbacks. Jeff, would you, if he can't practice on Wednesday, isn't he too valuable a commodity to even consider playing on Sunday?
I would not play him. Hey, given what you're going after, what you're chasing this year, how sensitive that injury could be. Now he did get some good news that it's only a sprain, and it seems like he can work his way through it. But yeah, if you're not able to go out and do some stuff during the week, as good as the Vikings are, and it's a game that they could lose because the Vikings are a good team, but this is the time when you need to find out what your team is made of. And I really believe that if you're going to win a championship in this league, you have to show a certain amount of character, a certain amount of toughness. And you look at the last 5 years, like every team that's won a championship has had to deal with something. And obviously the Chiefs, we live in Kansas City. We saw Patrick Mahomes go down with a knee injury. Eagles lost Carson Wentz to a torn ACL. Rams had a 3-game losing streak last year. I mean, you're going to be tested. And so it's not just about having a great quarterback. If you want to win a championship, you got to have a great team. And so this is the time when I think we're going to find out what the Bills really are made of. and if they have that kind of metal to them, because they still have a great defense. They still have a lot of weapons on offense. Case Keenum has been a productive starter in this league. He knows how to run an offense. You saw what he did in Minnesota a few years ago when they went on a 13-3, had a 13-3 season when he came in and replaced the quarterback there. So I don't think you want to push this too far. And I know Josh Allen wants to play, but you're not winning the Super Bowl in week 10. And so if I'm them, I'm taking it easy.
Sam, this is, the Bills are kind of following that trend. The Rams doing everything they could to be all in, I think somewhat to define themselves as the team of LA, get that championship first before the Chargers. They were already the team of LA, but not let the Chargers get in front of them. They had Justin Herbert. They were showing signs of life. I think the Rams wanted to grab that championship. It paid dividends. Kansas City Chiefs made a lot of moves like Frank Clark a couple of years ago to get that championship. Been 50 years since they'd won one. I get that. The Bills have never won a championship. We've talked about that a lot this year. And they're in an all-in mode, but you do have to think big. This is the one guy you have to think big picture, right? You don't force it now trying to win the number one seed. If you have to let that go, you should be able to survive for a week or two with Case Keenum. And if that means you got to go on the road, then so be it, right?
Yeah, I mean, total agreement with what Jeff said. And I was going to use the Mahomes example as the same one in 2019, just because obviously I was around that team every day. I thought that, when Mahomes goes down, you think the Chiefs season's over. I mean, that looked like a long-term serious injury that was going to end his year. 2 weeks later, on the back end of that injury, when he's coming back, it looked like the turning point of their season. I mean, I know they lost the first game. Patrick Mahomes came back, but he threw for 400-something yards in Tennessee. But I thought they were a different team in terms of their mentality and their mental toughness. They won a game without him, and I just thought they weren't there was this thought in their minds that at that point, nothing was going to stop them from winning the Super Bowl, if even the quarterback going down for 2 games. So I agree that I think with what Jeff said, that it could build some character with the Bills not playing with this guy for, even if it's just a week or two. But beyond that, even if that's not one of your positives of it, the 1 seed isn't the team that often wins the Super Bowl. In fact, it's typically not the team that wins the Super Bowl. And I do think, we talked so much this year about that the Bills were going to be the favorite to get the number 1 seed. I mean, not only because I thought they were the best team, but the Chiefs just had a loaded schedule. Well, now you look at the Chiefs' schedule, and it's the 3rd easiest in the NFL of what's remaining. Like, I do think the number 1 seed is at stake if Josh Allen has to sit a couple of weeks. But you just got to grit your teeth and bear that, because you can win other routes. The Chiefs haven't been the number 1 seed. They continue to host the AFC Championship game. There's other ways to get there, and I just think it's too valuable and too much of a risk to try and play them through it.
Yeah, Brady wasn't the 1 seed every time. I think it's more important to be playing well. Most important thing to playing well is being healthy, and if they're healthy at the end, that's the most important thing for the Buffalo Bills. Game-winning drive, late, ugly game for Tom Brady and the Bucs and the Rams, but they get it done. Listen, I'm not going to run from it. I said Brady was done. I'll stand by it until I see a little bit more.
I think we all did, didn't we?
I think we all did say, yeah, this is it. This is the end. I didn't want to throw you under the bus if you didn't want to, run to it. But I was pretty adamant about it. Not as adamant as I was that the Titans were going to take a beating last week at the hands of the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. But I was pretty adamant about Brady being done. Does that drive? Is that the kind of thing that gets him going? Is the fact that maybe that we're starting to put the family life in the rearview mirror and focus on football, and that gets it going, or no? Two teams really stumbling. Jeff ran into each other. Somebody had to win.
Like you see the room I'm in right now. This is what Tom Brady comes back to every day now, every night. He's going back to ain't nothing but a TV and a film room and a whole bunch of playbooks to look at. So I think in some ways it can be a positive for him on the field because, I've been divorced. I think once you reach the finality of it and you know what you have to do, it can be, even though it's hard, there is some closure and some sense of you can move forward now. And when I watched him in that game, in that press conference after the game, he looked happy. First time he looked happy all year. I haven't seen him look that excited about a game or a post game in a long time. And so that is a jumping off point. There are other problems with that team, but I've said this from day one with their issues. Like, he's one of the biggest problems just because of what he's been dealing with. And when you're taking whatever 10 days off in training camp, when you're going to Robert Kraft's wedding, and you're dealing with your now ex-wife, that's a lot of stuff. And the thing about athletes, especially athletes of his caliber, they don't know when to quit until they're actually beaten down. And so I think he's gone through some of that. And I think just the way that game played out and the way he rose up to the occasion gave them some hope. Now, I think the division that they play in gives them more hope because it's an awful division. They're still leading it. They can get some guys healthy. They're not going to go off and go on some deep playoff run. I wouldn't bet on that right now. But Tom Brady having a chance to be refocused and nothing else in his life to distract him, I'd bet on that all day long.
Yeah, no doubt. What do you think? Is any chance this spurs him, back into the the kind of play that he had last year, Sam?
Well, I'm never going to say that Tom Brady's done, because I remember being in New England in 2019 saying that Tom Brady was done, and he's won a Super Bowl since. But I think the way you phrase it, Soren, is the old Tom Brady back? And I think I would say for the Bucs to do anything, he has to be, because it's different than his first year in Tampa, where it took him a little bit to get going, but the product was so good around him that it allowed him the time to do that. That's not the case anymore. I mean, the receivers have been bad. The running game is the worst in the NFL. They're averaging 2.98 yards per carry this year. I mean, what was it, a month ago on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs? They ran the ball, 3 times, I think, the entire game. So there's no confidence there. The offensive line was beat up before the season even started. I actually thought that game-winning drive was more about the way the Rams were playing defense than it was actually what the Bucs were doing. So as much as, he certainly deserves credit for putting together that game-winning drive. First of all, it was the only time they reached the end zone. But second of all, I just was flabbergasted by what the Rams were doing defensively. So they might win the division, but that says more about the division than it does the Bucs going on some sort of second half run.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. The Rams were playing so far off, and then a pass interference set the Bucs up at the 1-yard line. It wasn't a completed pass that got him down there. It was a pass interference that got him there. I do think it was more Rams than Bucs. Speaking of the Rams, Jalen Ramsey calling out the offense at the end of the game. Listen, we watched them bring Marcus Peters into that mix as well and quickly move on from that. Sean McVay seems to have been able to handle a lot of personalities. Odell Beckham Jr., we know, has been a distraction. They won a Super Bowl with him on the team. Guys coming and going. Sean McVay seems to have been able to keep it all together. Is this where characters being tested and the characters lacking, Jeff? Is this an implosion happening?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, look, it is kind of comical that Jalen Ramsey can be upset about having to make a play to win a game again. Like, it's like, we've done our job. You guys do your job. We're done here. Like, don't make us go back out and do our job again. And so whenever you get that kind of defense offense rift, once they're talking about it, it's been a problem for a while. And we even said that too, that this has happened multiple times with the offense. And it's tough, man. It's hard to win a championship. It's hard to do it the way they've done it. And when you start to run your operation the way they've run it, where you're basically saying we're going to spend a lot of money on star players, bring in different people, and then have a collection of less heralded players in the supporting cast, what you do is you create natural divisions. And what you need is for your stars to really take control and to lead. And that wasn't what Jalen Ramsey was doing. And the problem is you don't have enough people in the locker room to keep that kind of chemistry intact. And so you mentioned Marcus Peters. That's the reason Marcus Peters got bounced out of Kansas City. It's the reason why the Rams didn't keep him, was because he's a very volatile personality. And I don't know what's happening behind closed doors. I'm sure Aaron Donald is somebody who's saying something. But when you lose an Andrew Whitworth, that has an effect on you. And I think he's one of those guys, one of the kind of guys in that locker room who was able to balance that stuff out. We had this conversation back before the season started about which team was going to do more, the Bengals or the Rams. And I thought the Rams were in in more trouble just because of their leadership void, the people that they were losing. And so they caught lightning in a bottle last year with all those moves, and it's great. The rings look great. But right now, rings ain't helping you. The fire is started, and what Jalen Ramsey did was just pour more gasoline on it.
Is this it for the Rams? Because the cap isn't pretty here moving forward. They lost their left tackle, their edge rusher, one of their top wide receivers, and now there's infighting with one of their star players. And any way you see him pulling out of this nosedive, Sam?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is that just because there's certain players that have been consistent figures here, Ramsey's one of them, Donald's one of them, Matthew Stafford's one of them. There's just been Cooper Kupp. There's just been sort of this assumption that this is the defending championship team, and it's not. I mean, this is the aftermath of pushing all your chips to the middle of the table for 1 year. Like, the Rams had to win the Super Bowl last year because of the way they built their salary cap. It was the only way it was going to be worth it. But when you win, you'll take this. I mean, if you have a 2-year run, you'll sign up for it all day long. And that's what, to go back to a topic we talked earlier, that's what the Bills are trying to do. They're trying to win it this year. I think their window's a little bit longer because of their quarterback situation. But this is the aftermath you experience when you collect star players from other teams that didn't grow up on the same team together, didn't get drafted together. Like, you put these personalities together and you don't have the draft capital or the cheap labor to fill in those key positions. I mean, this is what you end up with.
Yeah, it's a good point about that Sam's making, to cut you off, Soren, about the Bills, that they only guy they went out and got was Von Miller. Everybody else who's there has been there through the tough times. And those tough times help you get through tough times down the road.
Yeah. I think they've lost more talent. I think Sam's point about this isn't really the defending Super Bowl champions. It's a part of the defending Super Bowl champions. Some of the rest of them are elsewhere. Let's talk about the fact that Aaron Rodgers is ranked 27th in QBR and passer rating, which is more understood. I think a lot of people don't like passer rating, but I think everybody at least knows the scale. Aaron Rodgers is currently ranked 16th. He threw 3 interceptions against your Detroit Lions, Jeff.
Really, they come.
Eric Eager's Detroit Lions, as he had them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Funny, they finally a chance to take a victory lap, and he no-shows the show.
Nowhere to be found.
Yeah, nowhere to be found. 3 picks, not a good performance. I think it's the 5th time in his career he's thrown 3 interceptions. The other 4, he threw at least 2 touchdowns. This time he only had 1 touchdown. Bad defense and no production. Bad day. Is Aaron Rodgers done, or the Packers done?
I think that he's part of the problem now. And if you saw him on the Pat McAfee show, whatever, yesterday or the day before that, he didn't help
the day before that or the day before that.
Yeah, exactly.
He's on there every day, I think.
Yeah, but he's talking about just his, hey, I'm here. People know where to find me. If you want greatness, follow me. It's apparent to me that what happened a couple off seasons ago is starting to really take hold now. In that I thought that they wouldn't win a championship with the way that mess went down, that open feud he had with management. I think Devontae Adams left because he was tired of dealing with it. And I think that when you're calling out your receivers, when you're acting like you're not part of the problem, when you're not around in the off season, it's hard to lead when you're not there. And it's hard to lead when you show up and you do a lot more talking. So this was the first time he couldn't fall back on, I'm Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, 2-time defending MVP. I'm the guy who's going to make it happen. You guys just have to catch up to me. And when you're throwing 3 picks in that game, I think he hadn't thrown more than 5 picks in the season in like 6 years. And so, yeah, I can totally see, and this, I'm just totally spitballing here. I don't want to say that this is fact here. This is just me looking at it from afar. I'm sure Matt LaFleur's tired of it. I'm sure players in the locker room are tired of it. And now that he's playing badly, now everybody's probably saying, okay, dude, where is this going? I heard Mike Tannenbaum get up talking about if their season's almost done here, it's probably time to start thinking about playing Jordan Love a little bit more to see what he has left, to see what he can do for you down the road.
Yeah, and that'd go over swimmingly with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
and he'll keep it in house. He won't make a scene with it. Won't be on Pat McAfee every day complaining about it. Listen, the cap is hell too. Like they don't have room to go out and buy their way into the fixes. Sam next year is again, I use the term done because I don't know how you get the talent around him or. And even trading him, I don't even know. I have to look. I'll bring up the Packers cap. He might not be tradable for 2 years because of the hit that you'd have to have and in your cap situation. You want to call Aaron Rodgers done? Not going anywhere near Brady, tough guy. But will you call Aaron Rodgers done, Sam?
I think the situation around him is not going to improve. You want to say the situation around him is done, and it's because you're willing to put up with all the drama of that Aaron Rodgers has brought you the past couple of years that the play matches it. If he's an MVP player, he's not an MVP player. I watched a lot of that Lions Packers game. He throws off his back foot an astounding number of times. And I'd also like to point out, Jeff, how difficult is it to root for a team that if you lose to that team, the question is whether or not the quarterback that lost to that team is done. Like your team is so bad. The quarterback, something's wrong with the quarterback if he could not score against this team.
That's right. Well, that's how we do it in Detroit.
We should defend Aaron Rodgers. It is difficult to play well when your kneecaps have been bitten off by Dan Campbell. That does make it tougher to play there. Listen, how about this? If they were thinking about trading Aaron Rodgers at the trade deadline, which they weren't, right? They weren't. But if they were, take a guess at how much cap room they'd have to have cleared this past trade deadline to trade him.
Oh.
Just give me your guess. So I'm going to ask you a question before
55 million, 60?
60 million, okay. Sam?
For the dead money that they would take on, you mean?
Yeah, what's his so like if you trade a guy, it's just like cutting him. You have to be able to take the dead hit. So what would you don't go Googling?
I'm guessing the dead money's around 40 million.
Okay, 40, you say 60. How about next year? Give me what you think it is next year, Jeff.
Oh, next year.
This off season, if you want to cut him. You say 40. Okay, you come down to 40, Sam, next year?
I'll come down to 30.
Okay. This year they would have had to have cleared $151 million in dead cap to move it.
Right.
151. But if they get to the offseason and they say we're out, just $99 million. They just have to clear $99 million. So think about this. This is,
this is the most genius. This is the most genius revenge move of all time. Then for Aaron Rodgers, back at management. That's what we're looking at here. It's been discovered in real time on the Too Deep podcast that this is a revenge move for Aaron Rodgers to sabotage this.
This is the honeymoon, and both people are sleeping with somebody else, and they can't get a divorce, right? They can't get a divorce. I mean, I've never, ever seen anything like that. 151 million, right? You knew you weren't going to this year, but even 99 million. Now, year three, he's 41 million to keep, 25 million to cut. So,
a bargain.
24 season, it becomes a possibility. But one way or another, Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the Green Bay Packers over the next 2 years. So, it's a staggering contract on where it is. And I think, listen, there's a term, Mick Schaefer, friend of ours that does sports in Kansas City, has a term. He's like, we lost him. He said it about Tom Cruise when he joined the Scientology thing. No, he's gone. We've lost him. We have lost Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's no bringing him back from whatever it is that's good. It's more than just a haircut at this point when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. All right, Odell Beckham Jr. to Dallas. Perfect spot, right? OBJ rocking the Cowboys sideline. Mike McCartney's a lovable guy now. He's crying being back in Green Bay and getting in the good graces with the owner. You know what they need there? The OBJ in there and just stir it. I mean, that's got to work just right, doesn't it, Jeff?
I think it's a done deal, to be honest with you. I think that there's no other place he can go now because the Rams had bought it. The Rams made the most sense just because he'd been there, knew the offense. It'd be a quick, reintroduction. He could play right away. But, it's talk about Kansas City or even Green Bay or whoever else was what people have been mentioned. He's not going anywhere where he can't have a huge stage. And really, once you look at around the NFL landscape of what's available to him, that's the biggest stage he could find. Going to Dallas, walking in there, and, as Jerry said, having a star on his helmet. Now, I still question if he can even play this year. I mean, that to me is the most underrated aspect of every conversation about Odell Beckham. People act like he's Jerry Rice walking in the door. He had ACL surgery in March. And every other player who had surgery before that point that I know of is still not playing. I mean, Tre'Davious White is still not on the field for Buffalo. Chase Young is still not on the field for Washington. And these guys were hurt months before he went down. And so I don't know what he can offer on the field. And we even forget, the fact that he wasn't playing that great before he went to LA, that he basically threw a huge tantrum and got run out of the Browns and a huge tantrum and got run out of the Giants. So a lot comes with him. But yeah, put him in Dallas, have Jerry out there, have Dak throw him the football, have all the circus around him. He's going to be happy with that. Like, I don't know what he brings to the table, but I do know it'll be entertaining.
Yeah, it will be entertaining. To Jeff's point, Sam, about how he's played, first 3 years, he played 12, 15, and 16 games, tallied up in the neighborhood of 4,000 yards, right around 300 catches, a little less than 300 catches. He scored 35 touchdowns. Last 6 seasons, that includes this year, which he hasn't played because he's been hurt. Last 6 seasons, he has played in 53 games, has just 3,200 yards receiving, and has scored 21 touchdowns, right? And again, part of it's because he's missing games, 4, 12, 16, 7, 14 games played last year and none so far this year. I think Jeff's point about he really isn't that good is a big part of the equation. So why are you going to take on all the drama with it? But he was really good in the Super Bowl. Good fit. And do you see the path to success for him in Dallas?
I agree with Jeff and what you just said, Soren. I mean, his last 3 years of being healthy, he has been a pretty good wide receiver, not a great wide receiver. I understand how the fans' minds think. And so I understand them wanting Odell Beckham Jr. on their team. But from a general manager's perspective, it's a lot of baggage for a guy that, when healthy, has been pretty good, not great. But from Odell's perspective, I can't figure out a better fit than the Cowboys. If you're talking about from players' perspective, and if he's got some options to choose from, which he will, what team he wants to go to, absolutely the stage of Dallas, number one. But also just from a football perspective, I think the best situation for him would be to be a solid number 2 receiver somewhere. And no place offers that more obviously than Dallas. I think Green Bay is one of the teams that's been mentioned. He'd have to be a number 1 in Green Bay.
Right.
The Bills have been mentioned. I think Gabe Davis is a better wide receiver than Odell Beckham is, coming off of an ACL surgery right now. So I just think it's the best football fit for him. And it's the best limelight fit for him if we're just talking about the agent and player's perspective of it.
Yeah, no doubt. Cooper Kupp would make him the number 2 of the Rams, and I think that's part of the reason why there was success there. I think that's a great point. Jeff, listen, I again, not to bring up old spicy takes that maybe now are becoming freezing cold. I was not a Justin Fields believer, right? He's starting to play pretty good ball. I'll wear it, maybe he's
but you were on Tua though. You rode with Tua.
I did ride with Tua. I had the Bengals in the playoffs last year.
You got some receipts from that.
I can talk about my losses because there's a couple in the W column there too. But Justin Fields has looked a lot better. They're playing him much more like Lamar Jackson, right? Like they've said, this is what you do. You're good at this. Let's do this. They're embracing the run. He sets an NFL record for single game rushing by a quarterback. That's pretty impressive. And 10 touchdowns and 6 interceptions now. Like, would you like more touchdowns? Sure. But he's not killing the team as much with the interceptions. Are you ready to jump on board with Justin Fields and say he's the top dog?
I am. And I would say Denver should have taken him last year, and they feel a lot better about the team right now because they wouldn't have $250 million dumped into Russell Wilson and a team going nowhere. Look, Justin Fields has his flaws. There's no question about it. But the bigger flaw was a coaching staff last year with Matt Nagy trying to turn him into something that he's not ready to be. And I just think that I have a ton of respect for the coaches in this league who look at quarterbacks and say, this is where you are right now. We want to get you here. We want to get you to this point, but it's going to take some time. But we got to get you confident in playing in this league and doing things that make you feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I just think too many coaches spend so much time trying to show how smart they are or how much they can develop guys and how quickly they can do that. And what John Harbaugh did with Lamar Jackson in his rookie year paid huge dividends. What Nick Sirianni did with Jalen Hurts last year, going to more of a run-oriented offense in the middle of the season, using his legs and then bringing in people and working with him in the offseason has paid huge dividends. You see what Justin Fields can do with his legs. And I think the way he ran helped him throw the football better. And so you're seeing them get more production out of it and seeing what he can be. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have more quarterbacks coming into the NFL with this kind of skill set. And so the more coaches can embrace the idea of playing to their strengths. Look at what Josh Allen was in year one and what he is now. You can get there. It may take some time, but you got to start by giving these guys some confidence.
Yeah, and I think the Josh Allen one's a great one. By the way, Josh Allen, passer rating 7th, QBR 3rd. I'll give you another guy. I mentioned Lamar Jackson, who they have embraced. They embraced his ability to run the football. He set a single-season rushing record for quarterbacks in there. But passer rating-wise, now 8th in passer rating, 5th in QBR for Lamar Jackson. So the evolution of him as a quarterback, still a tremendous threat as a runner, but as a quarterback, he continues to evolve, get better. Right now, Justin Fields is 26 in passer rating, 13 in QBR. I think that's always a good sign that the QBR part, because it takes into account the rushing and the other things he brings to the table. Are you seeing enough now out of Fields to say, okay, maybe the early returns were not everything? The Josh Allen comp is a good one because there were a lot of people looking to throw him out after just a year or two. Sam, where do you sit on Fields now?
It's amazing to me that an NFL's front office drafts a player. They see a very specific skill set that they like in a player. Then they try to make him into a different player in the NFL, especially at that position. Soren, I'll also defend you, or maybe I don't know if this is a criticism or defense of your Justin Fields take, but I'll say the reason you thought he was done was because he did not touch down Micah Parsons. It had nothing to do
I will tell you that, and I said this to Sam, I said there is no way Patrick Mahomes doesn't touch down Micah Parsons. Like, you are not self-aware when you – but I don't know that Josh Allen would have touched him down his rookie year. There were some bizarre things that Josh Allen did too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that's a ding. I mean, I'm not going to – he's playing better, and his legs are setting up his arm, but his arm can develop, and his knowledge of passing routes. And I think, that's Urban Meyer style of offense is great for college, but it also is just, it does everything for you, right? You're going here with the ball, and in the NFL, that doesn't work as much. Doesn't mean he can't evolve out of that, right, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, first of all, it was the Dolphins' defense. I mean, I think we learned during that game, if we didn't know it already, that the Dolphins' defense isn't good enough to win in January. But I still think I feel like I need to see more from Justin Fields with his arm, because he's got the speed. He's really good in the open field. Lamar Jackson is really good in closed spaces. Like, he's good at making people miss behind the line of scrimmage on designed running plays. And I don't know that we've seen that sort of element yet. There was this thought that once people adjusted to Lamar Jackson, he'd be found out. And then all of a sudden it was, what are you going to do? He's still here because of his ability in those tight crevices. I don't know that we've seen that from Justin Fields enough yet to make up for what he can't do yet with his arm.
I think we've seen enough for them to continue with the Fields experiment, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Ton of cap room. They can put some more weapons around him.
Number one in cap room, even before their midseason trades this year.
Yeah, over $100 million that they're going to be able to go out and spend. They got Chase Claypool, who's at least a talent. Like, if he ends up being your third, fourth wideout, you're feeling really good, but they're trying to put some people around them. They can try to rebuild that offensive line. I definitely think we're seeing enough that it's worthwhile to continue down that road with Fields. And listen, they can get even more picks because if quarterbacks are where everybody wants to go and you're not going to take one, you start rolling back and grab an extra draft pick. So it could be an advantageous spot for them to really get a lot of ammunition to put help around Justin Fields next year. I don't think you're putting Fields at the top of the MVP class, though, are you, Jeff? Is this it seems like as soon as somebody's the flavor of the month, it's their award to lose.
Yeah.
Josh Allen has lost the award already. All the, it can't just be a front runner right now. It's got to be your award to lose.
Yeah. Well, it's Mahomes right now is the guy. And we actually had to do our midseason picks for NFL media this week. And so I actually put my pick in on Saturday. And then all of a sudden, Mahomes has a great game. Allen goes downhill. I'm like, I wish I'd picked Mahomes. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be Mahomes, Allen, and probably Hurts on the back end for the whole entire season, depending on how they play and how it goes. But you can't have a game like Mahomes had in the spotlight against a really good team where you're basically doing everything for your team and not get people to buy into you as the winner of that award. I think he's at 21 touchdowns and 6 picks right now. And I think Allen's at 19 and 8. I don't know. I think Hurts is probably like 13 and something like 13 and 4, somewhere around there. But ultimately, I mean, Mahomes got the pedigree. I think what he's done with the offense around him gives him a lot more cachet right now than Josh Allen does because you're seeing what he's doing with lesser talent. And to be honest with you, I think he probably gets a bump with what Tyreek Hill's doing in Miami because you lose a guy like that and you're still putting up big-time numbers. It says a lot about your ability and what you can do and how you've grown and developed. So I think that it will be neck and neck, but if I'm picking one guy right now, it's Mahomes.
All right. And by the way, you were right on all your numbers except for Jalen Hurts, 12 and 2. He is right now touchdown to interception. Tyreek Hill barreling towards a yardage record, although not finding the end zone that much. That's one of the things that's kind of bizarre about his season. I think it's been since, Jeff, 2002, 2004, that a quarterback, somebody other than a quarterback has won this. But I just want to mention the other players that do play this game. Tyreek Hill, Micah Parsons, the most dominant force on the defensive side of the ball. And I will mention another quarterback as well. I think those are probably the biggest non-quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa leads in QBR by 5 points over Patrick. He leads in passer rating. Just as long as we're going to, come back. I got something right along the way. He's 8 points better than Jalen Hurts and the number 1 rated passer, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I would nominate Tua as well for this, but is it Patrick Mahomes' award to lose, Sam?
Do you get compensated for Tua mentions?
Yeah, that's right.
I've got to, as we've talked about at several of my failures, I do have to kind of promote a couple of my successes along the way, so I don't look like just a doofus. On this podcast.
He's Tua's King of the North. He's got his own King of the North newsletter going.
I am Jon Snow. Yes, let's go.
I thought already this season that in case you were one of the people that credited the success of the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill, with Travis Kelce, as much as the quarterback, like this year was the evidence that it was Patrick Mahomes. And then this last game was the pinnacle of that. I mean, it looked like he was playing 1 out of 11 at times. Soren, you and I talked about it in our show on Monday, but the offensive line was bad. The receivers had a season high in drops. The running game was completely non-existent. Travis Kelce dropped 2 really key passes, one of which was an interception, one of which cost them a chance to try and, kick a 65-yarder at the end of the game. Like, the only reason they won that game was because of Patrick Mahomes offensively. The only reason they were able to move the ball at all. And they got 500 yards of offense. Now, part of that is because they ran 91 plays. But I think there's never been more evidence that Patrick Mahomes is the reason the Chiefs are the Chiefs. And he also happens to lead in the most prominent statistical categories that usually drive this award, even though, I'm sure Eric has 1,000 other numbers that should be factored in to something like this. He leads the league in yards and touchdowns. Like, he's already got the name cachet of it. The stats are in his favor. And when you play those kind of games and they're standalone games in prime time, people tend to remember that stuff too.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of things that have been thrown out here by the gallery. The Tyreek narrative will help Mahomes. I agree. Like
Yeah,
it
I
set
agree.
the stage, right? And we talked about that, Jeff, before the season began. Matz's too has missed a third of the season. He's actually only missed 2 games on the year. He left 1 game, but has missed 2 games. But that still speaks to where his numbers are. But a fair point. It's going to be difficult because of that. Tyreek is the offensive player of the year. And then my favorite, Irish Mac, who knew the talent. I can throw farther, opposite hand than Tua while on my knees. So I guess that voids him from the MVP discussion when Irish Mac can smoke you athletically. All right, who's the front runner for Coach of the Year, Jeff?
I'd love to go with Nick Sirianni because of what the Eagles have done, being undefeated. But I'm still on the Brian Dable bandwagon. I don't know if they can sustain it, and that might change. My vote might change after this point. But to be where they're at with what they have, they have nothing on offense outside of Saquon Barkley, and they've got a few players on defense. But what they've been able to do to stay in contention, I think it's a tremendous accomplishment. And I didn't know much about Brian Dable as a coach, like a head coach kind of guy. I knew he was a great offensive mind with what he's done with Josh Allen, a great quarterback mentor. But, he's done wonders with a team that I thought should have been in the top 3 in the draft without question. And so, yeah, I got to go. Talent means a lot when you're trying to get this award out to somebody. And the fact that the Giants have a dearth of it gives Brian Dable the nod.
Yeah, Brian Dable's a worthy candidate. He mentioned Nick Sirianni there. I think I'll give you some other names. Mike McCarthy is dealing with the circus and has lost his quarterback for a number. I think Mike McCarthy probably. I usually whoever has the best season. First of all, I'd like to give it to whoever wins the championship every year for up to me. But the best season is the one who had the best coach. And I know, well, look at all the talent he's got. Spare me. Mike McCarthy's done a heck of a job. Kevin O'Connell. You like the first year guy who comes in and turns something around. The Vikings have only lost 1 game. Chance to beat the Buffalo Bills this week. I know he's only 4-5, but Arthur Smith, the Falcons are supposed to be the worst team in football, and he's tied for first place there. Lest we forget Pete Carroll. If it weren't the Falcons, the Seahawks were the worst team in football, and here they sit in first place at 6-3. Listen, Andy Reid deserves credit. I know they're supposed to be good, and they are. That's still harder than people think. Mike Vrabel, I mean, he was outstanding. He outcoached Andy Reid last week. He's 5-3 and in first place in his division. John Harbaugh is 6-3 when people were starting to say that they were done. He's up at the top. How about Robert Salah at 6-3 with the Jets team that has had no quarterback play, and yet here he is at 6-3 and beating the Buffalo Bills. And then Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins too, quarterback in and out. Pretty thick, and don't count out Sean McDermott for the same reason I put Andy Reid in there. He's done a fine job with the Bills. It's a pretty thick crowd to choose from.
So who are you picking then?
Well, I was going to let Sam go, and then I'll go last.
I think if you're picking this award based on like mid-season awards, I mean, Jeff said NFL media was doing mid-season awards. It's a different answer than end of the year, because when you're picking end of the year, coach of the year, you're also sort of predicting where a team's going to finish. And so I agree.
Postseason, where they're going to finish in the postseason, you mean?
In the regular season. These are usually voted on at the end of the regular season, right?
Yeah, but okay, I'm sorry. I guess you're saying if the vote now, we're kind of predicting where they're going to finish. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah, I think you're because I think Brian Dable's a great pick, but I do think the Giants are going to experience a fall off, and therefore by the time we're voting on these awards, it's not going to be him. When I look at the team that has just completely exceeded expectations compared to where I thought they would be, to where they are now, the offseason that they had, and where I still think they'll end up, I think the Seahawks are going to win the division. And so therefore, I think the Seahawks are I think it's got to be Pete Carroll.
Yeah, Pete Carroll's had a hell of a year with the Seahawks.
I mean, Geno Smith is his – was he on your Tua list, Soren, by chance, Geno?
Listen, if just for the numbers, since we throw it around, we're giving everybody else out. Geno Smith is third in passer rating with a 107. QBR, Geno Smith checks in fourth in QBR, and on the season has thrown 15 touchdowns and 4 INTs. Yes, he should.
MVP numbers.
He should be talked about 100%.
You mentioned the precipitous drop after franchise
No,
quarterback.
wait a minute. If Geno Smith's the MVP, isn't that why Pete Carroll can't be Coach of the Year? I mean,
He made him into the MVP. He made him into the MVP. That's the argument. But if you talked about the precipitous drop of losing a franchise quarterback, which is totally a thing, like this is the opposite example. It's one of the very few exceptions to that rule is you trade away your franchise quarterback, just acknowledge to the world we're going through a rebuild. And by the way, I think one of the main reasons that Pete Carroll leads this award is the improvement that the defense has seen in season. It's harder to have that sort of improvement once you get rolling. And the Seahawks defense is actually like halfway decent now after worst in the NFL for the first month of the season or so.
Yeah. And playing a ton of young guys too on top of that.
Let's be honest. Like there's two, I like what Sam pointed out. There's a couple of ways to look at this. If we're to predict it, it's either, I think my prediction would be on who will win it, not necessarily who I would have win it. It will be either Mike McDaniels, Robert Salah, or Kevin O'Connell. Right? Because it's always the guy that comes in and surprises the most. But Pete Carroll's probably in that mix as well because they do like the old guy we counted out that we gave to. Usually what this award is the guy that proves the media the most wrong, right? The guy who exceeds the media's preseason expectations by the most. And I don't think that's necessarily always fair. If I were to give the award right now, like for what they've done to this point, if that's what this award is, it's Mike McCarthy. That is going through what he's gone through, everything, the way that franchise is set up, losing his quarterback. Mike McCarthy wins that award right now. If I'm to look over the horizon and give it to who I think deserves it, I think Pete Carroll is a really compelling candidate. But I do think that the Eagle, I think it should come down to
Sirianni
or Sirianni, because I'm still not convinced that the Eagles are as good as Jeff and Eric think they are. I think they're a fine football team. But I think record-wise, they're coming home 14-3 or 15-2. If Josh Allen is healthy, I think the Bills are coming home 14-3 or 15-2. Now, I didn't see that Jet loss coming, but those are usually one of the ones that you have. I think it should come down to McDermott or Sirianni, or I would, and I'd put Andy Reid in there if they end up being the 1 seed. I think it's tough to give it. I would generally give it to somebody who's a 1 seed, right? Because I think that's they've done the best job, but that's not how people usually view it. So
once you have a Mahomes, even a Josh Allen, people disqualify you from these kind of awards.
How many times has Belichick won it? He's won it a couple, hasn't he?
2, 3.
Yeah, but it's been a long time.
Yeah. If Andy Reid's going to have a year though, like he experienced more turnover on the roster. When you look at the way he had to rebuild his offense, rebuild's too strong, but tweak his offense because he lost Tyreek Hill. But also, as much as what's talked about offensively, the Chiefs experienced more turnover on defense than they did on offense. Wow. But I will just one point of contention, Soren. I don't agree with the fact that it should just be the best team. I think, Jeff mentioned the young guys that Seattle's playing. That is it's a significantly harder coaching job than some other guys have, and I think that has to be what weighs heaviest when you're voting for Coach of the Year. It may not be the media's expectations, but it's realistic expectations. When you look at Geno Smith is playing quarterback for that team.
Yeah.
I will not disagree, but I will footnote. I won't even object. I will footnote. Talented young players are the easiest to coach. I don't think they're the hardest. So if you've got talented, Jalen Ramsey's best days were his first couple of years when he hadn't become an a-hole, right? Like I think the idea of that, like, oh, well, look at all these guys they got. Ask McVay if the Rams, because yes, they've lost talent, but there's still talented guys there. And it ain't just humming along. It is hard to manage all the personalities, all the egos.
I agree with that. I think
you can motivate guys that have had success. That's not easy.
I think you mean coachable, though, and that's different from winning games. I agree with you that those young guys are the most coachable personalities. That doesn't necessarily equal the wins and losses. Like, give me talent all day over that.
Well, I think motivated individuals helps with the winning, but that's why they have lots of people vote for these awards, different views. looks at it. What are you looking at this week? You got a game, a matchup, a scenario, something that's jumping out at you for this? What are we at? Week 10 now? Is that where we're at, or week 11?
Week 10.
Week 10 of the NFL. What are you looking at, Jeff?
Chargers, Niners. I think it's a huge game for both teams, especially for the Chargers, trying to hang around, trying to keep pace or stay close to the Chiefs. They play in 2 weeks. If they win this game, it sets up nicely for them, even with all their injuries. I think that it's going to be a tight game. And I think if they can win it, it will make for next week's game to be a lot more interesting. The Chiefs.
Yeah. Okay. Sam?
I think the best thing would be to pick something we haven't talked about, but the number one thing I'm going to be watching this weekend is what the hell is going on with the Colts. And who is calling the plays for the Colts? Do they come up with a play caller by Sunday?
Yeah. The word is that it's the 30-year-old
Parks Frazier.
Yeah, assistant QB coach who got married this past offseason with Frank Reich officiating his wedding. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Like, what could go wrong? Sounds like a perfect fit there. I agree. Colts Raiders is one to watch. I agree with what Jeff was saying. I think Cowboys.
Just for clarification, it's not Colts Raiders. It's only the Colts.
Yeah.
Colts anybody. That's right.
Yeah. McDaniels and the Raiders have got some interesting things to look at.
Don't even care. Don't even care. Just give me the Colts half of it.
Yeah, I hear you. Cowboys Packers, I think, is of note for sure. I think there's a couple of interesting things that are kind of off the radar screen. I'll go with a couple of things that are off the radar screen. One, the Tennessee Titans. And we know how much we went round and round about how well the Titans played and the game plan and everything against a team they were 12.5-point dogs against, are getting no respect from that game because they're just a 2.5-point favorite at home against the Broncos. Right? Like,
wow.
Where is that? Who's giving the Broncos credit? But I think that's an interesting dynamic. So I want to see what the Titans do. Are the Titans just literally the kryptonite for the Kansas City Chiefs? And they're just kind of a okay team, but they have all the answers for the Chiefs. I think that's an interesting game to me that I think we'll certainly be talking about if the Titans talk about Mike Vrabel for Coach of the Year and all that. I think that's a big one. And then Bucs and Seahawks, right? Like if you look at the spread, Bucs are 3-point favorites against the Seahawks. We're talking about Pete Carroll, Coach of the Year, Geno Smith, MVP. Well, go slap down the Bucs. Prove that Tom Brady's done. That'll go a long way on the Seahawks. So I actually think we had a rough board of games last week, largely. Or maybe it was even two. Maybe we've had a couple of weeks. There's a lot of good games, right? There's a lot of games that have compelling storylines that are out there. So I think it should be a good week of football, certainly. Sam, thank you very much for filling in for Eric Eager. It's always great talking to you. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, columnist for the Kansas City Star. You see him read his work, if you would, kansascity.com. He does a great job covering all the sports and, of course, talking football. Of course, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, living it up. Life of luxury in the lap of luxury in Dallas, Texas.
Brady-like.
It's somewhat. I've also, as I sat and looked at your setup there, kind of like a horror film set. Like it does look like something could go horribly wrong in that room. So be careful tonight. Lay low. Get back safe from Dallas. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can hear my radio show at 810WHB.com. Listen, hit that like button, the love button, subscribe button. Don't cost you nothing. Does a lot of good for us. Tell your friends about the Too Deep podcast. So for all the guys and even Eric Eager, who's not here, we say thank you very much for listening and watching us here on